This is a familiar passage for many of us, right? Maybe you've heard it at a graveside or in a hospital room or in a sanctuary full of people celebrating the life of a loved one. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In God's house, there are many dwelling places. These are the words I preached from at my grandfather's funeral. Beautiful, true words that have brought comfort to people in some of the hardest moments of their lives. And even though I have returned to this passage again and again and again in life and in ministry, something different stood out to me this week when I was, as preachers like to say, wrestling with the text. Jesus is not at a funeral when he says this. He's at a dinner with his friends, as usual, and he is offering these words of assurance to his closest friends, knowing that he is the one that's about to die. Jesus is the one going away. They are staying put. And he told the disciples that where he's going, they can't follow him. These are the people who have left everything to follow this man. They have walked away from their nets, their tax booths, their families. They have staked their lives on him. And now he's telling them that after all they've given up, after all this time that they have spent together, and when it feels like they're just getting this movement up and off the ground, he's telling them that he is going away and they can't go with him. Imagine how that must feel. Put yourselves in their shoes and think of how you might react if you just heard this. And so Jesus tells them, do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not let your hearts be troubled. He's not offering them directions for how to die or what will happen to them when they die. He's offering them a reassurance of how to live. These are his last words of guidance to the people that he loves who are about to lose him. They don't know that, but he does, and this is what he chooses to say. This is what he chooses to say. You know, this is what part of what scholars have labeled Jesus's farewell discourse. And honestly, I could have pulled 5 or 6, maybe even 7 different sermons just from this passage alone. Don't worry, I won't be preaching that many today. Take a breath, it's okay. But at the center of all of this rich conversation that's going on here, what Jesus is doing is preparing his people not for death, but for a life without him in the flesh. And he leads with this: there is room. There is room for all. There always has been, and there always will be room for everyone. In my Father's house, there are many dwelling places. This is not a real estate promise for the afterlife. The Greek word here, because I think it's important for us to kind of get down to the nitty-gritty, the Greek word here is mone, which is related to the word meno, which means to abide with, to remain, to stay. It's the same idea that John uses throughout his gospel when he talks about abiding in God and God abiding in us. New Testament scholar Laura Holmes points out that place, that word place that we sometimes get so fixated on, isn't even clearly present in the original Greek. It's a hard word to kind of change it to what it truly means in the English. But what Jesus is pointing to is it's not really a spatial location. It's more of a relational one. It's a relational space, a shared life with the divine. A quality of being at home in God that is already available, already present, because they know Jesus. And since they know Jesus, they know God. This isn't about heaven's floor plan, but the very nature of the divine here and now and into eternity. Time beyond what we can comprehend. So when Thomas asks, but how do we find our way there? How do we find our way there? Jesus reassures him, you already know. We have been walking it together. I am the way. I am the way and the truth and the light. Keep going towards God, and I will be with you every step of the way. That line, I am the way and the truth and the life, no one comes to the Father except through me, has caused a lot of damage over the years. It has been used to draw hard lines around who is in and who is out. It has been wielded as a weapon of exclusion and fear and used as a justification for superiority, and that is not what this verse is about. Jesus is answering a question about loss. His disciples aren't asking a theological question around world religions. They are asking something much more intimate and personal. What do we do without you? What do we do without you? How do we find our way when you're gone? And Jesus assures them that you don't lose your way when I go, because I am the way. That's not a wall that lets some people in and keeps others out. That is a promise. Pastor Eric Fissler puts it quite simply, you've known God because you've known me. And after I'm gone, you'll still know God because you've known me. Then Jesus says something that might even be more difficult for the disciples to wrap their heads around. They will do greater works than he did. Greater works than their Messiah, their teacher, their prophet. The community that is about to be born on the other side of the cross and the empty tomb, that's us, by the way. We're part of that community. Is supposed to carry this forward. They and we are to make the spaciousness of God known to everyone. We are to co-create places and communities with God where people encounter that there is room for all just as they are. So what does this actually look like? When I first visited this congregation during this campus, actually during the interview process in June of 2023, I already knew that CCSM was an official, open, and affirming congregation of the United Church of Christ for over 20 years. I knew that. That is right. Amen. Amen. And that meant something to me. That is just one of the many things that drew me to this community. One reason why I loved this community even before I was part of it. But walking around the campus that day in June, in the middle of Pride, I wouldn't have known that from the outside or the inside. There were no rainbow flags, no visible signs telling and showing our LGBTQ plus siblings that you are safe here, you belong here. And I'm not saying this to be critical of where we were. I'm saying it because I think that most of us, if we're honest, know that knowing and believing something is true and making it legible for someone who is standing on the outside wondering if it applies to them are different things. Look at our campus. Our community. We are a multilingual community with a majority of folks speaking English or Spanish. And yet most of our signage is in English only. Does that reflect the inclusive welcome that we are trying to live out? Does that reflect our community as a whole? It has been a goal for several years to grow our ministry with children, youth, and families. But let's just pause for a second to think about what that means. Yeah, I hear an amen from the back, right? It means shouting amen in worship and making noise. That means messiness and running in the halls and down the center aisle of the sanctuary. And it means crying and talking and laughter filling this place. And even some places that we might dub as needing to be quiet. How are we truly reflecting the spaciousness in the rooms that we are trying to create with God? You know, when my grandparents started having trouble making it up the 4 steps from the driveway into my parents' house, my dad didn't renovate the entire back entrance. He just installed a handrail next to those 4 steps, something solid that they could hold on to. And that's what making room looks like a lot of the time. A small, intentional act, removing the thing that was in the way so that someone who wants to come in actually can. There is a lot of conversation happening in our country right now about who gets access and who belongs, who gets counted and who gets a voice, who is able to fully participate in the life of the community, and even worse, who should be discarded. Those questions are not separate from the gospel. They live right at the very heart of it, at the very heart of Jesus' life and ministry. When we say all are welcome, we are naming something true about God. There is room. There has always been room. There will always be room for everyone. But Jesus doesn't stop at the promise. He says, you are going to do greater works. The promise and the commission come together, which means the question lands on us. Are we actually building the welcome that we proclaim? Are the rooms that we are creating accessible and available to the people who need it most? Who is still standing on the outside wondering if that invitation includes them? Jesus prepares a place for us and then trusts us to keep preparing the house for one another. So the question isn't whether there is enough room. The question is, are we willing to do the work to make sure all the rooms are open? May it be so. Amen.
Great.